Hello, class. This is Mrs. Barrow. This is going to be for the students who did not get to do the Rise of Greece 04.01, page 5 and beyond, which is about the Phoenicians. Let's get started. Make sure you have your travel journal out and that you're taking notes. I'll probably give you a couple of hints about important things. So who were the Phoenicians? As the Greeks fell into the Dark Ages, a new superpower emerged. The Phoenicians were the next great civilization to rise up and dominate sea trade across the Mediterranean. The Phoenician culture thrived around 1200 BCE to 700 BCE. The Phoenician people were sailors and traders. They lived in a number of cities in the areas that are known today as Lebanon and Syria. Some of you might remember the Phoenicians from when we did the Persians. And if you remember, if you were in my class, I told you, remember the Phoenicians are like purple pirates. They created purple dye. And that was their most important export because it was really hard to make, so only royalty could afford it. And that's why when they have pharaohs in Egypt, they wear purple. When there was rulers in Rome, they wore purple because it was like a status thing. And that'll help you remember who the Phoenicians are along the way. The Lebanon mountains formed Phoenicia's eastern borders. The mountains left little flat land for farming. Due to this and few natural resources of their own, the Phoenicians relied on trade to meet their wants and needs. This meant that they needed to export, meaning sell goods, in order to import, which is buying goods, for what they needed to thrive. This need to trade led the Phoenicians to many faraway places. Okay, so the Phoenicians did not have a lot of fertile farmland. The landscape was rocky. The soil wasn't the best. And so because they needed food, they became seafaring people who ended up trading in between lots of different cultures. So this is going to read to us, and I'll just kind of highlight the important things as it goes.
Take a look at the map above. Can you find Phoenicia? It is the red area to the right of the Mediterranean Sea labeled Phoenicia. This location was ideal for trade. Why, you ask? It is located on the western edge of Asia and within sailing distance of Africa and Europe. Phoenicia sat in between the east and the west. The Phoenicians served as the man in the middle. People from the east relied on the Phoenicians to ship their goods across the Mediterranean Sea. People located in the Mediterranean Sea relied on the Phoenicians to bring goods back to the east. This led to the Phoenicians becoming expert sea travelers.
Okay, so that kind of summarizes what we just read.
Traveling along the Phoenician trade route meant that they had to leave their city of protection. Equipped with reliable ships and mastered skills, the Phoenicians took to the sea in search of new markets, resources, and homes. In the process, they explored new lands, where they often founded colonies.
Remember, colonies are the same thing from like American history, the British. We were originally British colonies in America, and eventually we fought for our independence. So it's a similar idea.
Take a look at the map. Can you find the Phoenician towns and trading centers? There are over 10 on the map. The Phoenicians' most famous colony was Carthage. As more people came to Carthage, it soon surpassed its mother city of Tyre in power and in wealth. In fact, when the Phoenicians came under attack from the Assyrians and others around the 800s BC, many Phoenicians left Phoenicia and migrated to the established colonies for safety.
Okay, so Tyre was the capital of the Phoenicians, their colonies. And Tyre is very famous for, the purple dye. We'll get to that later. But Carthage was an important trading post because Carthage ended up becoming the most wealthy city because it just had people coming in and coming out, imports, exports. Carthage was a very good resource and an important trading post for the Phoenicians.
With so many colonies spread across the Mediterranean region, it should not be a surprise that the Phoenicians left a legacy along the way. When a civilization takes on the traits of another civilization, it is called cultural diffusion.
Okay, cultural diffusion is that concept that we've talked about many times before, where when you're talking to other people of different cultures, you're sharing ideas, you're sharing technology. That is cultural diffusion because you pick up stuff from other people's cultures when they have good ideas.
Through trade, the Phoenicians not only carried goods on their travels, they also sprinkled their culture all along the Mediterranean region. Click on the hotspots above to discover the influence that the Phoenicians had on the people of the Mediterranean.
Okay, so I would take each one of these hotspots, write 1 through 4 on your paper underneath the Phoenician question, and write, summarize what's in that box in like a sentence or so.
The Greeks used the Phoenician standard of weights and measures. They also adopted the Phoenician way of writing. This meant that the Greeks no longer needed to use hundreds of symbols to communicate. Instead, they used the Phoenician alphabet, which was a small set of 22 letters or symbols, each which stands for a single sound.
Okay, so Greeks got their alphabet and weights and measures, standard weights and measures, from the Phoenicians. Remember, standard weights and measures is like, instead of saying, oh, this weighs 3 chickens, well, this weighs 1 cow, like they had one set thing, like how we have inches, feet in the United States. So they gave that to the Greeks. The Phoenicians brought standard weights and measures. Also writing, the Phoenicians had the first alphabet. Before that, remember, we had like hieroglyphics and cuneiform, where each character would stand for like a combination of sounds or a word, and the alphabet was individual sounds, and that's how we have it today. The Greeks got it from the Phoenicians.
The Phoenicians traveled as far as Britain in pursuit of a new resource. This new resource was tin, a useful material. They brought this new resource back to the Mediterranean region.
So the Phoenicians got tin from Britain and brought it back to the Mediterranean region. Before that, Britain only had tin. After that, the Mediterranean region had tin because the Phoenicians brought it there.
They also harvested purple dye from a sea snail. This expensive dye was called Tyrian purple. After the Phoenician city of Tyre, this was used to dye fabric. It was so costly that only kings and wealthy nobles could afford garments dyed with Tyrian purple. It served as a status symbol of wealth throughout the Mediterranean.
Okay, again, capital of the Phoenician, or not really empire, but the Phoenician colonies was Tyre, and Tyrian purple was made, depending on where you read, either from sea shells or sea snails. Like if you've ever been to the beach and you've seen that little bit of purple in a shell, like literally they were taking that and crushing it up and extracting the purple. So you can only imagine how long that would take people in ancient times to do. So it was very expensive and very hard to make. And that's how you ended up with rulers in Rome, Greece, and Egypt wearing purple, is because it was like a status symbol. It's like somebody wearing like an Armani suit today or something like that. So here we go.
Sidon was known as the center of the glass industry. They were among the earliest innovators of the blown glass technique. Sidon opened workshops in Italy, where, working with the Italian artisans, they perfected blown glass.
Okay, so Italy was glass blowing, which, is how we make different things out of glass nowadays. It's a very hard process. People get hurt in the process if they don't know what they're doing. And the Phoenicians took that from Italy and gave it to the rest of the Mediterranean region, and that was how that spread. Okay, next page. Okay, so yeah, just make sure you filled out your travel journal. Okay, so this page is good for review. And all of these words should be in your travel journal from this whole unit from yesterday and from today. If they're not, you can go through and kind of remember what it was and make sure that you put it in there because they're important terms and you're going to see them again later. So I would go through that and make sure my notes were complete before I take the quiz. Remember, the quiz, you only have 3 chances to take the quiz. So you want to make sure you study and you go over everything before you actually take it. And then, yeah, last but not least, you're at the quiz. So you could either study or review the lessons that I've put online before you take the quiz. Remember, only 3 shots to take it, and then you're done with your work for the week because that's the end of week 1. So I hope you're all having a fabulous day, and good luck.